SFM 106.7.
Sounds from beneath the sound barrier. Sounds from within the sound barrier. Sounds from beyond the sound barrier. The Sound Barrier, avant-garde music, every Sunday night, 10 p.m. to midnight on PBS. And good evening. You are indeed on PBS here in Melbourne, where it has just gone 10 o'clock. And I'm Ian Parsons with you for the next 2 hours with the Sound Barrier. But first of all, a very big thank you to Jerry Costa for the last 2 hours of Dizzy Atmosphere. He will be back with more next week. I am broadcasting on the lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nations, and I pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to any other First Nations people who might be listening either live now or later online. Now tonight on the Sound Barrier, we're kind of going to be burying ourselves in the depths of the earth, the labyrinths beneath it and the resonances from it. And this is all because of a work that's coming up in January and late January, early February as part of Midsumma. It seems kind of strange to be already talking about things coming up in January, but it's only a few weeks away now. And this is a revisiting of a dance opera by Evan Lawson, and Evan's going to be talking about it tonight. Evan, welcome.
Hi, Ian.
Great to have you in the studio. We're going to talk about Labyrinth in a bit in a minute, but it's a work that I've already got links up on the website for all the details about how you can get to it and find out more about it. But first we're going to listen to a little bit of music connected with it, and this is a piece called Thread Dance. It's the music of Evan Lawson, and it is performed here by... Can you tell me who's performing this? I've just suddenly realised I don't have that.
Yeah, I really didn't tell you who's actually in it. So the work is for electronics and 5-string electric violin, and the violinist is Helen Bauer.
Ah, yes, yeah. She is. You are right. I've got that written right here in front of me. So here is Thread Dance, the music of Evan Lawson, and you are listening to it tonight on PBS. Thread Dance by Evan Lawson there, played by Helen Bauer on 5-string violin. Evan, can you tell us what we just listened to there?
Yeah, of course. So that is an extract from Labyrinth, my newish, second time we've done it, dance opera. And that section forms the second scene of the opera, which is the largest danced section. And basically the story of this work is the story of the Minotaur and Theseus and the journey into the labyrinth. So the thread dance is an opportunity for the dancers in the show to manipulate and use the thread that Ariadne has set forth to find your way out of the labyrinth, and they interact with the thread, and Ariadne interacts with the thread. So the idea, the kind of philosophical idea behind it is this sort of weaving, magical kind of mystical weaving of the thread. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I mean, working with, these, I guess, great myths from, Greek mythology must provide huge opportunities, but also great challenges. And when you're presenting a work like this at Midsumma, Melbourne's great celebration of our queer community, how do you connect to to a work like this or to a story like this from that perspective?
Yeah, it's kind of the impetus of most of my musical career. Like my other major dance opera was Orpheus, mm-hmm. which we staged in 2019. So it's certainly a common theme with me to explore these myths, but certainly not in a way that is too repressive or conservative or the thing that I find most interesting, particularly in the Orpheus myth, but it also has relevance in this myth, is that we often know a very sanitized Victorian era version of these myths. We don't know that, a lot of these characters, or a lot of the male characters and some of the female characters would have had same-sex interactions, same-sex relationships. And, gender was a very different thing, right, in the ancient world. So, whether you are intersex, whether you're changing gender, or whether you're cisgendered, that kind of those concepts are far more fluid, far more interesting, different in those times. So it's kind of, in a way, easy to bring them into the 21st century because a lot of the sexual freedom we have that they had, and when we just had this kind of 500 years in the middle that got in the way, where we imposed all of these sort of social norms and everything. So Labyrinth is kind of quite interesting because really it's about shame, right? This woman has a bestial relationship with a bull and produces this monster of a child, but is he a monster, right? Is Asterion the Minotaur, is he a monster? Is he really this awful thing that should be hidden away and imprisoned in the labyrinth? That's kind of at the core of the work, is that, it's easy to pitch it as this kind of mysterious journey you're going to go through the, the embattled prison of the Minotaur, but actually it's really sad and really shameful and really, who's the bad guy in all of this? Yeah.
So that, I guess, really makes it very much a story that an audience will be able to connect with in terms of its ideas. What can people expect musically in this? How do you, describe your approach to composing?
Sure. So most of my work, like Orpheus, the work I mentioned before, is a good example of most of my vocal theatre work, which is the thing that I'm most interested in, has always been pretty stock standard: conductor, orchestra, singers. The dance aspect is really useful for storytelling and obviously gives me an opportunity to have vocal music as well as instrumental music. Labyrinth, my immediate concept for the work was for our pianist, Danae Killian, and to create a work where she plays the Minotaur. Because what I sort of discovered through Orpheus is that within my first opera, Calypso, I had actual characters singing gods and goddesses and monsters and things, and it just was a bit naff. And so in Orpheus, I made all of those characters, all those kind of otherworld the gods, the actual sort of immortal characters, instruments. Mm-hmm. So it created a really interesting sort of instrumental theatre idea I could play with. And then in Labyrinth, I was like, okay, well, the piano is going to play the Minotaur. I also had this vision of it being multi-room. So the work is immersive. You're taken on a journey through multiple rooms.
And this is actually underneath, below ground level at the...
Well, it is and it isn't. It's sort of in kind of the ramshackly kind of corridors and things of the convent. The previous space we were at the convent was literally the basement of the building, so we have to kind of do a little bit of work to have that same sort of vibe about this. We're actually in two large sort of warehouse spaces, so there are moments that are very claustrophobic, and then there are going to be moments that are really wide and open. So you've got the dance aspect, you've got the singers, and for me as a composer, I've never worked in that sort of multi-dimensional space, so I immediately thought, well, I probably have to put electronics purely for an immersive aspect to create a sonic world that is continuous from the entry point through to the end of the work. And I'd never really done that. So I'd always wanted to, I'd sort of fiddled around with work, particularly during COVID, creating sort of sound recordings and manipulating like my own singing and sort of synths and things like that. And so this was a great opportunity to bring those experimentations in, have the acoustic elements, and then we've also got one flute, one viola, so they journey with the audience, and then the two dancers, and those four elements kind of act as elemental aspects of the labyrinth. They're the people who are guiding you through. They're the people who are handing the three singers. We've got various props that they need throughout the show, and then we've got the three characters that are actually embodied by singers. Ariadne, Theseus and Daedalus, who is the architect of the labyrinth.
And when you're working or creating a work like this, how much are you creating with already in mind the people who will be performing it? Because you work with Forest Collective, an ensemble of, tremendous musicians. Are you working and thinking alongside those musicians as you compose?
Yeah, absolutely. They're, integral to the vision. So this work was devised for Forest. Danae was the original sort of impetus to write a virtuosic work for her. She's just a brilliant pianist. Her focus in life has been the work of Arnold Schoenberg. So to dedicate your life to that canon of work and to play it in such a magical singing way, it was just a joy to write her virtuosic music. Daniel Sezion Todd, who is a tenor singer with Forest Collective, he's also a brilliant poet. So Dan and I had been talking about collaborating on something, and I was like, this is perfect, right? I can have Daniel, who's got the perfect look for Theseus, sing his own words and tell his version of the story through his poetry, and, writing music to other people's words. I've done it a lot now, and thankfully it's always worked. The collaboration's always worked, but we know many horror stories where it doesn't, and it's just Dan and I seem to have a symbiosis in this work where it just feels really right that the words meet my music. Yeah.
So we will have a listen now to a little bit more, and this is Asterion and Theseus. We were talking offline about off air about my difficulties with anything with THs and S's in them because they all come out as THs. But that said, Asterion and Theseus, the other guy, can you tell me what we're going to hear in this? Yeah,
of course. So this is the culminating scene of the opera. So throughout the opera, you have met Theseus. He's told his story. He's trying to free, the people that have been sent to Crete to be sacrificed to the monster. He meets Ariadne. She's sort of using her sexuality and her position in the labyrinth to try and escape and free herself from the sort of confines that she finds. We meet Daedalus, who is the architect, and in our version is kind of this like mad genius who's been locked away in the labyrinth all this time. And then the work culminates in Theseus going in and doing the deed and killing the monster. And the monster, you've heard it as you've been going through the labyrinth, you've heard this piano in the distance, and then we come face to face with the piano. So it's quite a powerful moment. You turn the corner and then boom, there's a piano, and it plays this massive piano cadenza. And the cadenza itself, the idea is that it is depicting the battle between the two, and it ends with this sort of weird lullaby. And the idea with that is it's the monster has been killed and its heart is slowly stopping. So that's the idea at the end of the work. But you'll hear it's quite violent and confrontational at the beginning, which is Theseus running in with a sword and the battle starts. Because I wanted to create moments that, like, in the end, we didn't stage it. We thought, how cool is it if all this action happens and then you're just confronted with this sort of abstract piano cadenza. But in the music, it was also, I wanted to make sure that if we did stage it and we had it danced or whatever, we could tell that story through the music. So it's also kind of like a melange of all of the main themes from the opera are kind of put in a blender, and this is the piece that's spat out the other end.
Well, let's have a look and listen to it now. It is Danae Killian playing it, Asterion and Theseus from Labyrinth, music of Evan Lawson, and you're on PBS. It really is powerful stuff, and Evan Lawson's Asterion and Theseus from Labyrinth, and it was played by Danae Killian. And if you were listening closely there, you may have recognised that famous Gregorian chant of Dies Irae, the Day of Wrath. You're on PBS.
As night falls and fruit bats fly, a new experimental music program takes over at M Pavilion. Over summer nights, some of the country's most forward-thinking musicians invite you in for a series of intimate gigs at Tadeo Ando's M Pavilion. From synth odysseys and electric acoustic improvisations to doom metal, dream pop and drone, these one-off sets will push boundaries between the concrete walls. Free entry by ballot. Explore the lineup at mpavilion.org. Proud PBS sponsor.
Amazing stuff, that, Evan. Wonderful, wonderful piece there. Can you tell us a little bit about when this is all happening, where it's happening, and how people can get along to it?
Yeah, absolutely, of course. Labyrinth is playing from the 31st of January until the 8th of February, and it'll be at the Abbotsford Convent as part of Midsumma Festival. So you can head to forestcollective.com.au. We've got all the details there about tickets. We're doing, a couple of shows. I think we're doing like a Saturday, Sunday night, Tuesday, Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So come along. The show's at 9 o'clock. So if you're worried about wandering around the spooky convent at night, maybe avoid, but it's a spooky show at a spooky time.
It sounds just perfect. And the way you describe that whole experience of kind of turning corners and finally, meeting the Minotaur in the form of the piano, it just sounds so, utterly engrossing and immersive in so many ways. And incorporating dance into it as well. There is on the website a bit of a short video of it, and it seems that has worked in very seamlessly into it as well. Yeah,
I mean, it's such a great tool for storytelling, right?
Yes.
Particularly Ash Dugan, our fabulous choreographer, his vocabulary is very abstract. So I find that really stimulating when you're able to, particularly in opera and a narrative-driven work that can get, you don't want it to be twee, you don't want it to be cliche. So adding that element gives it a richness that just affords the music a depth and a complexity that you might not be able to attain necessarily with the narrative all the time. So that's really stimulating. And also it's a practical thing, right? Like singers need a break. They can't sing the whole time. We've got an audience of 50, 60, 70 people that need wrangling. So we also need a couple of extra bodies to help guide them through the labyrinth. So we can't just do that with the two singers. So it's also a practical thing of the dancers can kind of weave in and out of the building, in and out of the earth is the idea. Yeah.
And the piece we're now going to listen to, Echoes, is connected with Labyrinth but not directly taken from it. So can you just explain a little bit about how this fits in with the bigger scheme?
Yeah, absolutely. So Echoes from the Labyrinth is a piece from 2022 that I wrote when we originally decided to go on the Labyrinth journey. So I was writing a work for a festival in Thailand that was for violin, viola, cello, flute and clarinet. And so I thought, what a great opportunity to write a test piece, essentially, to put some ideas on paper that may make their way into the final opera. Most of it didn't, but you will hear pepperings of ideas from the piano work. And in the violin piece we first heard, the electronics actually has samples from the first performance used as a part of the electronics, and they're sort of peppered all the way through. And there's a series of harmonics at the beginning of the work that I use throughout the violin part in Labyrinth. And you'll also hear in this piece that the strings, if it comes through in the recording, the strings are on stage and the flute and clarinet start off stage behind you, and then they move. So again, that spatial idea is sort of explored in the recording. The recording we're going to listen to is performed by Homophonic, so it's the Australian premiere of this piece. And of course, Homophonic, amazing Midsumma, stalwarts presenting, amazing chamber music concerts. So there's a great connection there with the whole festival.
Homophonic is a regular event on this show too.
Absolutely.
Miranda comes in, which so very much looking forward to. So this is from 2024 Homophonic?
They did it last year, 2023.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep, so it's the Homophonic team playing this recording.
Terrific. Well, let's have a listen to it now. Mark from Torquay, who's house sitting in Torquay. Thanks for texting in, Mark, saying how much he's enjoying our chat, Evan, and your music as well. But then how could anyone not?
Oh, thank you.
So, Evan, thank you so much for having a chat to us about all of this. It's wonderful to be able to be giving some glimpses of this really exciting work coming up and hearing a little bit of its backstory and the ideas behind it that you've been bringing into the work, and that will certainly be part of this performance in a few weeks' time.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Thank you, Evan. Here now is Echoes from the Labyrinth, music of Evan Lawson, and you're on PBS. listening there again to the music of Evan Lawson, Echoes from Labyrinth. It was performed by Kim Tan on flute, Karen Heath on clarinet, Natasha Conroe on violin, Phoebe Green on viola and Campbell Banks on cello, recorded at 2023 Homophonic. And if you want to get along to Labyrinth, the full work, it is part of Midsumma this year in Melbourne. Melbourne's big celebration of our hugely diverse and creative and vibrant queer community. And Labyrinth is being performed as part of that. It begins on the 31st of January and go through until the 8th of February. And you can get tickets to that through both the Forest Collective website or the Midsumma website. And I have links up to both of those on our website. So wherever you are, if you're on the internet, you should be able to find your way to this and then ultimately take the journey through it. Labyrinth. It sounds an amazing work, very immersive work at Abbotsford Convent, music of Evan Lawson, a dance opera. And thanks to Garth for texting in just at the beginning of that piece. Garth, like Mark beforehand, was really enjoying our chat, my chat with Evan Lawson, and the music itself, and How Could United really is terrific stuff. And I kind of thought, well, I need to go somewhere after a work like that that also connects with the depths and the core of the earth, justice.